Welcome, episode 2 of the Endurance Eats series, where my dietitian team and I we're going to discuss answers to your most burning endurance nutrition questions. So, brief intro, I'm Alex from Alex Larson Nutrition, where we are focused on helping endurance athletes fuel for performance and body composition with a flexible eating style. And I have with me my two very special team members, both dietitians. We have Hannah Cooley and Mary Wirtz here. I think we all hail from Minnesota, right? So you might notice some Midwestern accents from us for sure if you haven't caught episode 1 already. Mary, you're in the Twin Cities area, or not? No, sorry, Hannah, you're in the Twin Cities area. Mary, you're from the Twin Cities area, but in Montana. And then I'm up by Duluth, the frozen tundra of the north. Though it's starting to finally get nice out here in the spring. So if you haven't watched episode 1 yet, make sure that you have blocked some time off of your calendar, catch up. We do a big intro for all of us, but I'm going to make sure to include in the notes here of this video a link to my website where you can read our bios and our background. But please don't forget to tap that subscribe button below so that you can get alerts for future episodes, because we're definitely going to do more of these, because we discovered after episode 1 that this was an absolute blast to record and do. We kind of just love to nerd out on these endurance questions. And if you have your own questions, we would love to hear from you. Go ahead to the comments, ask your questions. We'll add it to our queue to discuss in the future. So we have 3 questions today. We're going to get this started here with question number 1. How do I know how much sodium to take in during a long run? And honestly, we could talk for hours about this, but we'll try and keep it like somewhat succinct here. But Mary, I want you to lead this one off for us here, and then we'll discuss a little more.
Yes, and I love talking sodium guidelines all day long. This could be its own episode, and we might need it to be someday, Alex. But you mentioned run. I think it's important to also understand that the sodium recommendations are kind of transferable across the board, and also riding as well for our cyclists, athletes out there. But this is such a relevant topic, particularly as we head into the warm, hot, humid summer months. A lot of our athletes may be going on trips up to altitude where sodium needs are even higher. So the short answer to the question that you mentioned is, of course, it depends, right? We always joke around. Most of these questions that we get asked, it really does depend on a variety of factors: temperature, duration of exercise, intensity of exercise. But for most athletes, I really do recommend getting a calculated sweat test or a sweat rate to better determine your sodium needs for different runs and different temperatures. So most of the clients that I work with, my athletes, I have some athletes doing 4 to 5 different sweat tests in varying weather conditions, because we've been finding that for most of these, their sweat rate is nearly doubling right now outside as it's getting warmer and more humid. So most athletes are going to need between 500 milligrams of sodium on the lower end per hour to even 1,000 milligrams of sodium per hour on the higher end. But again, I think for most athletes, starting with a sweat test or a sweat rate would be the best idea. Do you ladies have your clients typically do the sweat test?
Well, especially just to learn kind of their fluid losses. But if they are someone that's coming in that already says they have like chronic cramping issues, they've had like significant like not necessarily bonking, but some sort of like episode where they're in the medical tent at the end of their races, like for sure the more information that we can get to kind of dial in electrolytes and fluids is really helpful. So I had one particular athlete who did a 70.3 in Wisconsin a couple summers ago, and she ended up taking an ambulance ride with acute renal failure. And she was so scared to race again that she came in and we started. She came in the winter, which made it a little bit more challenging. But as we got into the spring, she did do one of those patch test kits through Lavelin and was losing I want to say like 2,700 milligrams of sodium an hour. I mean, she was not a very big person. And I mean, that was a lot of salt. And
That
so
is
for her, that was
astronomically high.
a
Yeah.
huge relief for her in understanding why she had that situation. And then now we knew, like, okay, this is going to be a big challenge for you, is one, getting enough fluids, and two, making sure we can palatably get enough sodium in you to get through those longer endurance trainings and on race day, like staying healthy and safe. Like, it's not even necessarily about finishing at this point, it's about safety and health, because hyponatremia is deadly. So that's where, you know, when they're coming in with issues, which is usually the case when I say, okay, we really need to invest in like a sweat test where we can learn sodium levels. But if it's someone that, you know, hasn't had chronic cramping issues, we might not go to sodium levels right away. We might just kind of guesstimate based off of their fluid losses.
I had a similar athlete like that, and we had him do the level and test. Just because why I had him do it is I knew he was drinking a lot of fluids, but we were slowly increasing his carb amount that he was taking in on the ride. And he was upwards of like 100 to 110 grams of carbs per hour, which there wasn't a lot more that we could go with there.
Mhm.
Like, in the sense of like, I don't actually know if this is going to keep helping to increase this, but he kept running into that kind of like dizziness, like bonking. And I'm like, all right, we're already at 1,000 milligrams of sodium an hour. I think that we should do some testing just to confirm. And he was at like 3,500 milligrams.
So much.
Oh
So
my God.
So much. But like, we slowly increased his sodium. So it's like over time, we're like, let's try 1,500. Let's try 2,000. Let's preload you. So let's get you a lot of salt before you even start your ride. And what we found is that his energy was that much more sustained, because as you guys know, it's like, it's not just, you know, maintaining glucose levels, it's maintaining electrolyte levels too, to help with that blood sugar regulation over the course of the ride. So that was really interesting to me too, that it wasn't necessarily like increasing carbs for him necessarily, it was the sodium that helped him with sustained energy throughout.
yeah.
Rather than even just supporting like not cramping.
And there's signs too for a lot of athletes, like when your sweat dries, when you have like the like white kind of salt caked on your brow or on your clothes, like that's a huge indicator that you're going to be a salty sweater. And if you're someone that's just starting out in training and you're not as at that like really high peak fitness level, you're going to be losing fluids and sodium at a higher rate than if you're at like a really like high level of fitness. And so knowing that you're going to need to adjust like earlier on in the season, then you might not need as much later on. Or if you know, are someone that lives up by me and you're going to go do a race in Florida where it's, you know, super hot and humid in the spring, you're going to have to account for that too, because you're going to just sweat so much more and lose a lot more electrolytes. So you have to kind of plan accordingly on how you can really dial that in to keep yourself safe and finish strong.
Absolutely. So I think to answer the original question, typically for most athletes, again, there's always the asterisks, there's always outliers, there's always variable conditions that can affect this, but most of the athletes we work with need at least 500 milligrams of sodium per hour, which is going to be very difficult to get in unless if you're optimizing your nutrition during your runs or your rides and utilizing a lot of the sports hydration mixes or other products available out there.
Yeah, let's talk about some products and what I mean, there's a million different electrolyte products out there and sports fuel products. And it depends too on like, are you just a sole runner? Like, it's easier with like trail runners because they usually wear a pack. You can carry things with you versus like a marathon runner. You oftentimes are just like whatever you can hold in like your fuel belt. So let's talk about our favorite products that we like for ourselves and for what we find is popular with our athletes too.
So a couple of my go-tos have been for everyday kind of hydration outside of running itself, the kind of your baseline electrolyte needs. The Element, and then also the Liquid IV. I love their flavors. They have a new golden cherry, which is just phenomenal. A client and I joke around that like when you first mix it, it doesn't quite mix all the way and you get some salty crystals in your mouth and it is so good. It tastes like a non-alcoholic margarita.
I was just gonna say, you're gonna totally go the margarita route. I know you are.
So I love that. The thing is with the Element and then also the Liquid IV, they are very low calorie. So it's not really something that I would have clients utilize on a run or a ride longer than an hour. Certainly it would be something that they could do on a shorter, easier ride to get in the salt without the extra carbohydrates. But for the longer runs, the longer rides, a few of my go-tos have always been Tailwind. I love Scratch, and I've been having clients concentrate it a little bit more lately to make it higher carb, higher salt. And also Precision Hydration is kind of a newer one.
Yes.
Yeah, I would echo the Element Tea. I love it. I love the mango chili. That one is amazing. My husband got me onto that one. So that again, I like having a few different options. Like you said, like Element Tea is 1,000 milligrams per packet, whereas Liquid IV is 500. So kind of playing with those things. Precision Hydration has some 250 milligram tablets. So I like having some like increments like that you could use in combo with some of your sports products. Like the super high carb, I recommend to a lot of people. However, for 100 grams of carbohydrate that you get in your 7 scoops of that, you're only getting 400 milligrams of sodium. So that one likely does need to be supplemented with something else. I also like the base salt. That's personally what I used in Kona. I mean, that was in 2019. We've come a long way since then. The only
Was that the one where you like lick the thing, or is it like how did that one remind me with the base salts how that one's used?
Yeah, so it comes in like a little canister. So I would just hold it like this. You lick your thumb, pop it, put your thumb on the top, and then pour it over. So you just get like a little bit on your tongue, on your.
Okay, my mouth is watering right now, even thinking.
I know.
Of this,
Are you getting that like that?
I live in the desert, so I'm like, oh, tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I did that like probably every 15 minutes in Kona. The only problem with that is I'd have to look back. I can't remember like what they say the dosaging actually is like per.
Yeah, I feel like there can be, it's not as accurate.
It's not as accurate.
Did you do that on the bike too? Because I feel like that would be, I'm always thinking of logistics, coming from a triathlete background of like, is this easy to use on the bike, especially because some of our athletes are going into races that are super windy. And so they don't have a lot of time that they can take their hands off the handlebar. So that was just one thing that I was thinking of, like, is that easier to use on the run than it would be on the bike?
So I wasn't great about my sodium in Kona. There was a lot I didn't know. I was great about it on the run, but I got lucky in the sense that I'm not a salty sweater. So I felt like there is like that little asterisk, like I don't sweat a ton. I'm not a salty sweater. So I got away with a lot. But I did use a hydration mix that did have sodium in it. When I was in Kona. Otherwise, I did not use the base because that would have been really difficult to reach in the back and while you're riding an arrow. So I would have just had a more concentrated bottle with higher sodium needs in it and then had something that was free water too.
I think it's because you're a redhead. You're just kind of a superhuman that you can like push through the pain and you don't sweat at all. Like nothing phases you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've always tolerated heat well. So it just goes to show that there's going to be, that's why we do recommend that testing. So we can really
sure.
put it in,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will let me say that I've had a few clients try out the Scratch hyperhydration.
Yeah.
And they've really liked it. That one has, I think, 1,800 milligrams of sodium per serving. It's a little bit lower carb. I think it has 17 or 20 grams of carbohydrates. So you'd still have to supplement with something. But that is from what I've heard, I haven't tasted it myself, one of the best tasting, highest salt ones available. It's been on my to-do list, but I don't love passion fruit as a flavor, and I don't think they have many other flavor options.
Yeah.
I've been so spoiled with Element and Liquid IV that I haven't explored a ton other than
I've had a lot of athletes that use salt sticks, like the chewable ones. They come in capsule form as well, but I'm really terrible at taking pills, and the thought of like exercising and taking a pill at the same time sounds like a death wish for myself. So I mean, those chewables are kind of nice. They're only like 50 milligrams a chewable, but I've had athletes take a mini M&M's tube and use that to carry them instead of like a little baggie. So they just pop the top and they'll just take a couple, throughout their races, but just as a extra way to supplement some sodium as well. And those come in all sorts of different flavors, which is nice.
I love it. I love it. I had a client recently. So we have a wonderful blog article on the altitude and training at altitude. And so she recently went to Colorado Springs, which is about 6,700 feet. So it's kind of that moderate altitude. And we had her load up on electrolytes. She particularly chose LMNT the few days prior, and then also really loaded up on fluids. I mean, she was drinking close to a gallon a day of hydrating beverages, and she felt no symptoms of being at altitude.
What?
I was no, none. And she comes from complete sea level too. So
wow.
I think it's also, again, I cannot stress enough, if we have any listeners going to higher altitude to train or even race this summer, really having a good solid nutrition plan as a base heading into your trip is critical, particularly from a hydration perspective.
And the carbs too, but yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. Definitely check out that high altitude blog article, because so Mary and Hannah, they helped me with writing on the blog. And Mary, you're like the most competitive person in the world, regardless of anything. And so anytime I task you with writing a topic, you're like, this is the best article on the internet on this topic. Like, you're like, there's nothing like it on the internet. And so and you said that with that high altitude one, and it really is. I mean, we're so competitive. Our goal this year is to create the best endurance nutrition blog on the internet, and we're really close to getting there in that high altitude one. The bee's knees. Kudos to Mary for researching that so well.
But I also love their confidence, right? Like, this is the best. This is the best ever. You know what I mean? That's great. I love that.
Well, because there are certain topics out there where we're just like, there's not a lot of like great comprehensive information put together from all of the research on these topics, and that's presented in a way that's very applicable, practical advice for athletes. And so that's kind of our goal when we write those, is that we take the research and we make it simplified for people to use it. And everyone likes to get their information in different ways. There's YouTube, like this series, there's blog writing. So we want to just be able to present that information in the best way for people to take it and use it and be successful. And if you're someone that finds that it's really hard to just take in all that information and then apply it to yourself, that's what our one-on-one program is really for. And our program is ongoing coaching. It's not just a one appointment and done consult. Like, we are here to dig in deep, have you practice your nutrition. We tweak along the way. We provide that accountability and support, because our goal is to get you to a point where you feel like you can maintain a lot of the results that you achieved in the program beyond working with us one-on-one. I hate that people have to go back and to a dietitian over and over and over. We want to be that last stop shop for you in terms of like getting you in a spot where this is very sustainable. So just a plug for our one-on-one program, shameless plug. But if you're someone that just can't take this information and quite figure it out for yourself, like, just come into the program and let us help you figure it out so that you're good to go. And you can be one of those people that does endurance sports for as many years as you want to and be successful at that, because nutrition is a huge part of that. And we have, our age range of athletes in the program, mid-20s all the way up to 60s, I would say. We have a wide gamut of athletes, and it's so fun. It's the best. We have the best. Yeah, we have the best clients.
Totally. It kind of helps that we're the best too. No, I'm just
not modest at all.
No.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to our next question here. And I'm going to have Hannah lead this one off, because she comes from kind of a fitness center background too here. The question is, should I be eating the same things before weightlifting that I would before a cardio workout like a run? And before Hannah starts, I will say, huge fan of strength training for endurance athletes. I know we're all like cardio junkies, but I cannot stress enough how important it is to include that resistance exercise for preventing injuries and also like body composition, especially as you age, because we tend to lose muscle mass as we age. And so if we're doing some strength training on a regular basis, it doesn't have to be a lot or a ton, but just really helps with body composition.
Yeah.
So, all right, Hannah, I'll have you tee this one up.
So kind of like the theme of our last episode, most often we can say it depends. But for most of the people that are going to be listening to this, they're going to be complementing their strength training with their cardio. So when it comes to fueling before any workout, we still want to make sure that you're focusing on carbohydrates, specifically that's going to digest really well for you. So in that case, it's going to be a little bit lower in fat, a little bit lower in fiber. So carbs still between a cardio workout versus a strength workout are always going to be supreme. As far as protein goes, a lot of the reason why we wouldn't suggest having a lot of that prior to a workout is just because it might sit a little bit heavy in the stomach. It does take a little bit more time to digest. But in trialing over the course of, several different workouts, if you find that your blood sugars feel a little erratic, if you're not adding a little bit of protein to it, adding that protein is going to be really helpful. I know, Alex, you said that in the past that you actually do better if you add a little bit of protein to a straight carbohydrate.
Yeah. My blood sugars are a little more on the sensitive side. So even if it's just like some yogurt, I don't have that like sugar rush.
Right. And I've had that happen with some athletes where they're like, gosh, I feel like my heart rate's, racing a little bit when I have this much carbohydrate. And there's always that question of, is that a bad thing? And not necessarily if you're going out to do a hard long ride or long run. But having that protein is going to be really important. Let's say if you're doing like a back-to-back workout, which a lot of people will do, like they'll do their run and then they're going to end their run with a 30-minute lift or a 40-minute lift or whatever it is. So getting that little bit of protein prior to is actually going to support the recovery on the back end. Plus, it's just going to help you get to your protein goals over the course of the day. So a lot of our athletes, like if they're just focusing on the carbs, they do have a hard time reaching their protein goals just because they're missing out on a key meal in the morning to get that protein. So by and large, you guys feel free to weigh in, but carbs, most important. Protein is going to be important to add in addition to it. Let's say if you're doing a back-to-back workout, if you're doing a really long workout, or if you have specific protein goals in mind, knowing that maybe in your off season, the goal is to put on lean mass, or for body composition purposes, keeping that protein high is also really important to keep the metabolism up, to keep the blood sugars regulated. So there's a few different reasons as to why we would include protein, before a, workout, but by and large, it doesn't really matter. I mean, between the two sessions, just kind of depends on your goals.
Yeah. I would say don't just have like a protein shake before a strength training session. That's like a common thing that people might see other,
that's what I see all
doing.
the gym bros doing.
I know, right? Exactly. Like skip that. I would save that for post workout, whether it's cardio or strength training. Like I think people underestimate how much glycogen they burn through, like how much carbs they burn through for a strength training session, like especially if you're lifting heavy. And I mean, wouldn't you agree? Like even for cardio athletes, like it is good to do some heavy lifting, like really help stimulate that muscle building and yeah, like it really does require a lot of energy. So if you've ever done a strength training session and you're getting towards the end and you're like, oh, I can't finish this last set.
Yes. Yep.
That's the carbs. Like you're running out of carbs. Like that's where you really need to think about, okay, I got to fuel more beforehand. So those last sets are just as strong as the first. And yes, you could have a little bit of protein beforehand. It's not like 100% you have to, but if you wanted to, I'm game for that, just to help you hit those protein numbers. And with any workout, you're going to see a little bit of muscle breakdown during, which is why we want you fueling with protein afterwards to help replenish that and start that rebuilding process. But if you're doing, especially in the off season, a really heavy, long strength training session, it's not a bad idea to do a little bit of protein before.
Absolutely. I have a few clients that, to Hannah's point, that do double up their workouts. They'll do their run or their ride and then go to the gym after and get in their, 30, 40 minutes weight session. And so it's imperative to pack easy, on the go, portable options. And I always say it doesn't need to be overwhelmingly expensive or glamorous. Honestly, a bagel sandwich, peanut butter sandwich, some bars, some fruit, some trail mix. I mean, honestly, all of the above, because many of those options are going to be great post-workout options as well. But I always say there is no plan without a plan, and you just simply have to plan ahead for if you're going to be away from your house or away from a reliable source of food for an extended period of time. Otherwise, it makes it really easy to fall trap to, Alex, to your point, to underfueling then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, most of our, especially like triathletes, where you're just struggling to fit in all your workouts, and then the thought of like trying to fit in a strength workout here and there, I mean, you're just going to need to constantly be packing snacks with yourself. Because if you're doing, I had an athlete last summer who she would get in her swim workout, she'd do a strength workout or some sort of class, like group training class. I mean, she's doing like 2-3 workouts like every morning. And I'm like, girl, you got to be having snacks between those sessions, and I need you fueling a ton. Like, she just was under fueled. And the one thing she noticed that was different from all the previous years she had done an Ironman Wisconsin training is that her weight stayed so steady throughout the whole summer. She goes, usually it's all over the place, which kind of freaks people out. We're like, oh my God, I'm up 5 pounds, or oh, I'm back down. And like, she's like, it has been like spot on all summer long, which she said usually it's not like that. So putting some planning in place, keeping yourself well fueled, not only helps you have really great workouts consistently, but also will help your weight like from fluctuating majorly as well.
And hunger levels.
Oh, yes.
If you guys have ever noticed this too, let's say if it's like you're used to getting a certain amount of protein, and then for a few days, let's say if you're traveling, your protein, which it's harder to get protein in when you're traveling, is like half what you normally do. I notice more of like a build effect. Like if I keep my protein, like if my protein's pretty low for a few days, it's like my hunger is so much more erratic, and it kind of comes on like a freight train. Like it's like, it's like, oh my God, I'm hungry now. Right. Whereas like if my protein is more consistent, I just feel like I feel like that kind of slow build of hunger, which is a kind of comforting spot to be. Like, you just don't want to feel like food's always on your mind and all that. Like, so keeping protein consistent is really helpful in keeping the weight consistent too. So
I would agree. Okay. Anything else to add on this topic? Otherwise we can move to our last one, which is this is a question I get a lot, actually. Okay. So our last question of the day is, due to surgery, I can't train for 4 to 6 weeks. What to eat to recover well and not gain weight? Oh, I can just feel the fear from athletes when they like get sick, have an injury, and they have to take time off, and this like epic fear of weight gain, which can throw them into like some disordered eating tendencies, some restriction, this I'm going to lose all of my fitness, I'm going to gain weight, and it's going to be so hard for me to come back. And like, I get that, but I don't think this is a time to really heavily restrict food, especially depending on the surgery. This is me saying it depends, again, because there's so many different factors here, but depending on the surgery and your needed recovery, you do still need a good amount of calories and nutrition so that you can heal efficiently and get back to training quickly. So I think that's something to consider as well. I would definitely prioritize protein during this time to just help preserve your muscle mass as much as possible during this time of rest. You might not be feeling, especially right after surgery, appetite can take a little while to come back, but having some sort of like protein drink to sip can be helpful to just really help with any healing that needs to be done, like tissue healing, and then also preserving that muscle mass. Since you won't be as active, carbs your carb needs aren't as significant. So that doesn't mean by any means that you have to go like low carb or no carb, but you just don't need to have as high of a carb intake as you would normally when you're training. Another thing I'd focus on would be like fruits and veggies, getting in those micronutrients, super important for healing. And they are lower calorie and they are very filling and something nice to snack on. And then I do see with athletes who, and this depends on their training and their workouts, just from like a mental piece here, this isn't even like a nutrition piece, but something that can happen when you're recovering from a surgery or some sort of sports injury is that we become really reliant on exercise being the thing that supports our mental health, that brings us joy, that brings us happiness, that's our stress reliever. And I would challenge that a little bit in like, yes, exercise is a wonderful stress reliever, but it should not be the only thing in your life that you can count on. So if you are going into a surgery, a time of, recovering from a surgery, or always planning ahead that if you do get injured, that you have other things in your life that relieve stress, that bring joy to you, that boost your mood, so that if you take a break from training, whether that's planned or unplanned, that you can continue to be in a really good mental state. Because there are some people that can rely on food to be that comfort for them. And that gets to be a slippery slope then as well with some disordered eating. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
No, I think that was a very thorough response. You hit the nail on the head. I think optimizing protein and also fiber is absolutely imperative because that athlete appetite doesn't go away right away.
Yeah.
And even after my most recent marathon, that athlete appetite does not go away right away.
Yeah, well,
And
it's like a habit too. Like you're so used to serving these like
Yes.
epic portions, and because that's what's normal to you, it's not an easy flip of the switch. You have to be very intentional. I noticed that for sure after I got done with Ironman Wisconsin. I was like, holy smokes, people could gain so much weight coming off of a race, because I really took a break from training and I was like, this could be easy. And there are some athletes that will gain like 20-30 pounds after a big race like that because they just don't even realize how difficult it is to shift. So going into whatever type of break it is, whether it's from a surgery or post race, like you have to be intentional and thoughtful on that.
Absolutely. And normally that plate, we're so focused on encouraging athletes to, center a lot of their meals around healthy carbohydrates, perhaps a little bit of fruits and vegetables, especially if they're more sensitive to fiber and it causes GI issues, and then some protein. Whereas again, post surgery, you're really going to want to bump up that protein, decrease the carbohydrates, and load up on the fiber as much as you can.
Yeah.
Same goes with traveling. A lot of my athletes are traveling and taking summer vacations, and they may not be exercising as much. These strategies are transferable to those individuals as well.
Mm-hmm. I would also recommend like specific nutrients too. Vitamin C is essential for appropriate collagen building. So if you're dealing with some kind of tendon issue, that might be helpful. You could even get collagen in through something like a bone broth, or even taking a collagen powder specifically during, not only to keep the protein up, but also to support the actual healing process. But in addition to that, like as the carbs drop a little bit, emphasizing those healthy fats again. A lot of times when we're working with athletes and they're in a big, heavy training period, in order to reach the carb amount that they need to support their training, a lot of times those fats do come down a little bit so that they have room in their appetite to support carb intake. And we never recommend like low fat, obviously, right? Like that's really important for hormones and for satiety and mental health and all of that. But encouraging more of those healthy fats can be a little bit of a hormonal reset as you're going through that kind of mandatory rest period too. So not only is it sometimes a break, a forced break is never what we want. Sometimes it is a blessing in disguise just to let our body reset.
I would say too, like with whether it's like recovering from a surgery or any type of sports injury where you're just not able to do that training, looking at some of the discretionary calories and being very thoughtful. And like, I might take a break from drinking alcohol during this time, and I might take a break from, going out to eat quite as often. And like just being a little more intentional there can really set you up to come off of that break, not being, 5 pounds heavier and then having to try and lose that while you're trying to get back into that fitness level too. So, I mean, that can be another area that it's not forever that you have to like eliminate those discretionary calories, but it could be really useful and just keeping you in a good spot to come back stronger than ever.
Absolutely. And many of those foods and beverages, again, it's, we don't take an off limits approach. It's not completely off limits and more or less budgeting, but many of those higher sugar, higher saturated fat foods are going to be more inflammatory anyways, which can delay that healing response. So to your point, yeah, that's a really good strategy as well.
Yeah. Mary, you had an athlete this winter that was kind of coming off an injury and he lost quite a bit of weight during that time and like went into his, he's a runner, like went into his running, like very successful.
So he actually just emailed me this morning. I was so excited just to check in. I always love hearing from clients that have graduated our program. And he emailed me this morning and his cholesterol improved by 30 points, his LDL cholesterol, which was phenomenal. He's been able to maintain that. And we did focus on body composition goals once he was dealing with that injury, and he's been able to maintain his fat loss, which we are ecstatic because he's healthy again, he's training again, gearing up for a fall race. So just very, very good.
Best feeling.
Cycle all around. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and Hannah had an athlete that just PR'd at Tulsa, Ironman Tulsa by an hour.
Yeah.
An hour.
I literally just got a message, Alex. I was going to tell you after, but I can do it now. It's going to Nice.
Oh, he got in?
Yes. I know. I'm so excited. I hope he listens, because this is a little shout out, even though I won't say his name.
Okay, who PRs by an hour?
I know.
Like an Ironman? Yeah.
Like working with him was so fantastic. Like he made so many positive changes to his fueling and he was so spot on. And he had signed up for Ironman Lake Placid too, as more of like a kind of a backup, right? Like this was just going to be the dress rehearsal, like kind of work out the kinks. And then Lake Placid was going to be the second kind of go at it.
Just but he got his championship slot.
It's fun. So that's pretty exciting.
It's so much work that goes into those races to try and qualify and get, those slots are precious. And so like, oh my God, I could like tear up. I'm so excited for him.
I know. And he didn't think that he'd be able to do it. So I am just, like we said in the beginning, I am so thankful for our clients. It is like truly, I don't know, not to get too sentimental, but this is pretty awesome. This is a great job.
Okay. So I talked a little bit about that like stress reliever and exercise. So I just want to, as we close out this call, hear from you guys. Other than training and exercising, what other stress relievers do you guys like focus on to help? Just if you can't exercise, what else do you do to like relieve stress?
I personally love anything sourdough. You girls know that that was my COVID hobby and it's just stuck. We even named our sourdough starter. Her name is Alice. And I love experimenting with.
Like you have to feed Alice. Is that what you have to feed her? Oh, I love that. You need to teach me because that is a bucket list thing for me. I want to learn that.
I love it. Honestly, tomorrow, so I do a weekly menu board because otherwise my girls ask me what's for dinner about 100 times. And so tomorrow for dinner, it's Alice sandwiches. So we're having Alice tomorrow night. But that's wonderful. Alice. Yes.
Oh my God.
Other than exercising, reading, I personally absolutely love to read anything and everything. And we would love book recommendations, by the way. So in the comments section, please, Hannah and I are struggling over here. We need as many book recommendations as you can.
I don't know how many books that we've started lately. And it was like, no, that was bad. Nope, that was bad. Nope, that was bad. Like we've struggled.
I know. It's been really bad lately. Yeah. But other than exercise activities, I think reading, cooking, baking, those are kind of my go-tos. I'm not an arts and craftsy person. I really want it to be, but it's not my thing. Not my thing. What about you, Hannah?
Yeah, I would say I do like cooking and I do love reading. I I am the artsy person. I literally have a pack of markers right in my my desk drawer. I've always loved art. So that is something that I really do love to do. I love to walk with my pup. Again, that's more exercise related. I don't do this frequently, but when I can, I actually love massage. My mom was a massage therapist, so she would always give me massages in high school, like before. I know I was so spoiled before, like
That sounds amazing.
That sounds incredible.
it was amazing. And then in college, like in running in college, like we had a team massage therapist that you could literally just get, massage whenever. So that is something that I think is truly amazing too.
What about you, Alex?
Okay, well, I actually have an Instagram post that I've used a couple times now, 7 ways to relieve stress that doesn't involve eating or exercise. And so I'm going to read through these ones and then I'll share. I guess for me, I do like to read. I just don't have time to lately. So I sometimes will do audiobooks. A nap is like a stress reliever
Naps
for
are
myself, like because
Really
I just
underrated.
love sleeping. I would agree with getting a massage. And then sometimes for me, just like socializing with people, because I'm an extrovert that has kind of converted into an introvert just from COVID. And while I love my alone time, even just going and meeting up with a friend for like at a coffee shop or going out to dinner with them or like visiting with my family and playing like a game night, those are really like big stress relievers for myself as well, like just social time. So okay, let me go to my 7 stress relievers here. So some of them we covered, but stretching and yoga is one of them, where you just do some like deep breathing, some meditation to release that tension. Sleep is on there. Get a massage. So Hannah, yours is on there. Socializing with friends, nature. So not necessarily exercising in nature, but just like getting out and being outside can be really important. Have an orgasm is also on my list. So sexy time or with your partner or on your own. And then take a vacation was the last one. So
Yes, vacation. I will always be up for vacation.
Yes. One of my favorite things actually is when we go to a place and I'm like, it's like forced no reception, because you don't have like, it's
like
not the choice to put the, the airplane mode on because I still feel guilt, right? Like I chose that. So if somebody's trying to reach out to me, but if it's like, I literally have no reception, that is truly relaxing to me because I'm like, well, sorry, not available.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Because as much as like we can feel like social media and like scrolling on our phones can be like stress relieving because we're trying to like escape the stresses in our life, and honestly like the research shows it's not helpful for our mental health. So I would also agree, if you're really stressed, sometimes just disconnecting can be really important too. So all right, this was a really good episode. Thank you so much, ladies. Again, we are taking questions from you all that are
And book
listening
recommendations.
and book recommendations. Yes. So click the subscribe button. That's number 1. And then ask questions in the comment section, either following up to what we discussed today, or if you want like a whole discussion on a topic, let us know, because we are kind of adding to our queue here. We've got some ideas of topics that we want to discuss, but would love to hear from you as well. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.